Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here today. I'm Melissa Turley, the Executive Director of Energy Conservation Works. We lead and engage our community to conserve energy and make renewable energy accessible and affordable. And we're really happy to have all of you here. Please make yourselves comfortable. Enjoy the refreshments in the back of the room, and hope you enjoy the presentation from Megan and Mark today. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. One other housekeeping item I'll make is we do have a sign-in sheet in the back if you guys could all sign in so we can send you fun emails later. But my name is Megan. I'm the program manager at Energy Conservation Works, and thanks so much for joining us all today. I'm joined today by Mark Berry, president of Bighorn Heating and Cooling, and our HVAC expert, and he'll walk us through what heat pumps are, how they work, and what to consider when thinking about them for your home. And I'll be sharing some information about incentives a little bit later in the presentation. We're excited to share heat pump basics and how to get up to $900 in Lower Valley energy rebates. Before we dive in, just a quick note, please hold your questions until the end. We've saved plenty of time for discussion and would love to hear from you then. This is your first time hearing about Energy Conservation Works, like Melissa said. We are a joint powers board and work closely with the Lower Valley Energy, the town of Jackson, and Teton County to make energy efficiency and renewable energy accessible and affordable to our whole community. And this is our team. Our staff is pictured above and our board members below, including citizen appointees and representatives from our local organizations, Town of Jackson, Teton County, and Lower Valley Energy. And before diving into heat pumps, let's take a quick step back and look at the bigger picture of home energy efficiency. This is the energy efficiency conservation pyramid developed by Minnesota Power. And like the food pyramid, it helps you prioritize projects, breaking from the foundational to the more complex. It starts with your understanding of your energy use and then moves up to low-cost fixes and weatherization before reaching more advanced upgrades like heat pumps and solar. These early steps are critical, and improving your home envelope like air sealing and adding insulation boosts comfort, reduces energy waste, and lowers heating loads, making any system you install perform better and more efficiently. Today's focus is on heat pumps for heating and cooling, which sit near the top of the energy pyramid. So why start here? Because demand is rising, especially as summers get hotter. More residents are asking about heat pumps, which offer both heating and air conditioning are up to 2.5 times more efficient than traditional systems. So we'll do a quick poll. Raise your hand if you've heard about heat pumps before this event. Okay, now keep your hand raised or raise your hand again if you could explain how they work to a friend. All right, a little bit fewer. So hopefully we hope by the end of the day you'll feel more confident talking about this technology, even impressing a family member or a friend with your knowledge. And with that, I'll hand it off to Mark.
Great, thanks, Megan. Yeah, once again, my name is Mark. We've really had the pleasure of working with ECW and Megan specifically. They're truly a top-notch organization that has really partnered with us to make this program really successful. We kind of started work with them just a few months ago, but we really hit the ground running and had some tremendous success so far. Just a little bit about us. Bighorn Heating and Cooling has been in business for 20 years, headquartered out of Worland, Wyoming. We've got 4 locations: Worland, Cody, here in Jackson, and then Idaho Falls as well. So we've got a pretty good operation. So let's dive into it here. What is a heat pump? So you can think of a heat pump like so one, it does air conditioning, right? A typical air conditioning system takes the heat from inside of a room, puts it into the refrigerant AC system. That refrigerant takes it outside and dissipates that heat outside. So you're basically transferring heat from the inside to the outside. What a heat pump does is run that cycle in reverse. So you're actually taking the heat from the outside, even when it's really cold out, and bringing that heat indoors. So you can think of it just like your typical, air conditioner, refrigerator that same science and technology that you're using, but you have this one component called a reversing valve. That's really the technology behind the heat pump. That makes it able to do, to not only heat but also not only cool but also heat and do it really efficiently. So what it boils down to, and the science behind it that I won't get too deep into, is a vapor compression cycle. You really have 4 core components. You have the indoor unit, which you can see over here with this demo unit. This is your indoor unit here that now it's inside your home. You got your outdoor unit that's kind of behind this little wall here that houses the compressor and the PHV. And essentially what those are doing are you're running the vapor compression cycle, and 2 of the core components, the evaporator and the condenser, are basically switched between the indoor unit and the outdoor unit. So when you're in cooling, the indoor unit that's inside the home is acting as the evaporator. The outdoor unit is acting as the condenser. When you're in heating, then those 2 roles switch so that your indoor unit is now your condenser, your outdoor unit is now your evaporator. So to simplify things, you're just running the refrigeration cycle in reverse, and it's pretty impressive technology. So it does have an auto function where you can just set it as, hey, I want it to be 70 degrees inside, and it'll automatically switch over and control that reversing valve to go into heating or cooling. And again, these are those 4 components. You have your compressor, then your condenser, your evaporator, your electronics expansion valve, your EXV, and those condensing unit, the condenser and the evaporator, essentially just switch roles between heating and cooling. So what I will say about heat pumps is that they've come a long ways in the 15 or 20 years that they've been in existence. And I think when they originally came out, they kind of got a bad rap. But the technology that we have today with heat pumps is just tremendously different. The state-of-the-art technology that allows these units to go down to negative 22 and less, be able to heat down to negative 22 and less. It's so much different. And I think the initial impression that everybody got was that these things don't work in cold climates like we have here in Jackson. But that couldn't be further from the truth. So the thing that we hear the most is these units only work in mild and warm climates. But like I said, we're seeing units now that are getting down to 100% capacity at negative 15 degrees. There's even newer technology that's getting down to 100% capacity at negative 22 degrees. And just to give a personal anecdote, I have one of these Fujitsu systems in my apartment. There was cove heat that was existing. We installed one of these mini splits in this past winter, although it was a more mild winter. I didn't have my cove heat on at all, so it was the mini split just took care of the heating the whole winter. So they are the real deal, and that is probably one of the misconceptions that we see the most. We typically hear that these heat pumps are noisy. This is running full blast right now. So I mean, we install these under decks. We install these on the side of house, and how quiet they are today is quite a bit different than a traditional AC unit, and even the heat pumps, that we had 5-10 years ago. Again, they're not only for heating, but they're also for cooling. That's typically why we see, customers reaching out to us is, hey, I want cooling in my home. These summers are getting warmer, or I want to be able to close my windows and still have it comfortable inside. And so these heat pumps not only get really efficient heating out of it, but you also get the benefit of comfort and cooling as well. Heat pumps only work well in small homes. That's another misconception. These heat pumps go up to 5 tons, which would take care of about a 4,000 or 5,000 square foot home. And you can have all sorts of configurations with these heat pumps: ducted, ductless. You can have a high wall unit like this is. You can have a unit that's mounted on the floor. So they are really flexible. They're great for small homes, but they're also really, really beneficial for large homes as well. Then the last point here, heat pumps being expensive. I will say that there is a significant upfront cost. But when you factor in, the energy savings that you get, um, the rebates that you can get from Lower Valley Energy, the financing that you can get from Energy Conservation Works. I think and not to mention also the operational costs um, of the low maintenance with these units. I think they're a lot more affordable than people typically think. And in some cases, a lot more affordable than a typical ducted system, especially when you're talking about retrofitting a home. So why do people go with these heat pump systems instead of traditional, either electric heat or gas furnaces? Um, you know, it really boils down to four different things. One is the energy savings. So the energy savings that you get with a heat pump, um, you know, the way I like to think about it is, for electric resistance heat, the cove heaters or the baseboard heaters, for every unit of energy that you put in, you get 1 unit of energy of heat energy out. With these heat pumps, for every unit of energy that you put in, you can get up to 3 or even 4 units of energy out in terms of heat out of these heat pumps. So much more energy savings that you get, much lower electrical bills. Um, the low maintenance. Typically, when we install these, you got to clean the filters on the inside. You got to make sure that there's no cottonwood on the outdoor unit. Other than that, there's not a whole lot to these systems. There's not a whole lot of moving parts like there is in a traditional furnace, gas furnace, or even electric furnace. So we find that when it comes to maintenance, these systems, are more or less set it and forget it, with the exception of making sure that the indoor unit and outdoor unit are staying clean. And then the comfort. Obviously, you get the heating, you get the cooling. The beauty of these heat pumps, and specifically these mini split systems, is that they have inverter style compressors in them, which allow them to regulate the indoor temperature much better than a typical 1 or 2 stage air conditioning unit that's usually on and off. These systems run almost continuously to make sure that the set point is being met inside. That results in one, the energy savings, but also better indoor comfort, maintaining a set point a lot better than just the on and off that you typically get from traditional system. And then again, the quiet operation of these are tremendously more quiet than a typical AC unit. And like I said, we put them under decks, we put them below windows, and I think typically customers are pretty impressed with how quiet they are. And again, that goes back to the inverter technology. That a lot of times these units aren't running at 100%. Usually, if it's a mild day outside, it might be running at 25 or 75%. So specifically with Teton County, I think, and the reason we sell so many of these and install so many of these here in Jackson and Teton County more broadly is, a lot of homes here weren't designed with cooling, right? You get homes that are 30, 40, 50 years old, back then, and even today, we see a lot of homes being built that don't have cooling. Once you get in there and that sun in the summer starts to hit that window just right, and you get weeks like last week where it gets up into the 90s. A lot of people want a cost-effective option for cooling, and compared to putting in a bunch of ductwork, these ductless mini splits are a really good option for retrofits. Two, a lot of the homes here only have electricity. Especially on the outskirts of town, you get a lot of these homes that are all electric, which means these heat pumps that are also all electric are a great option. Or if you have propane where you got to come and fill up the propane, typically that's also a good option for installing a heat pump, because that can get pretty expensive as well. The other benefit that we have here is, we got these long shoulder seasons. Obviously we get the really cold months, but the other 8 or so months of the year, um, these heat pumps are most efficient when it's between, I'd say 70 and 40 and 70 degrees, and that's quite a bit of time here, in Teton County and in Jackson, and that's when you get the most optimal heating out of these heat pumps. So we have the benefit of that here as well. Uh, Electricity rates are rising. We did see a 6% rise last year. I think that's pretty universal for every place in the country. Just with more demand, electricity rates are going to rise. Um, and then just the benefit that we have of Lower Valley Energy with the rebates they have, and then the program that Energy Conservation Works has. It's a pretty good option for heating and cooling here in Teton County. But just a couple design options or different scenarios that you can have when you install these. So heat pump is a pretty universal term. What I've been referring to today is mostly the ductless type. But there are also heat pumps that you can install for a ducted system. So if you do have a forced air system in your home, you can install a heat pump. Um, but like I said, most often, especially for retrofit opportunities where we're coming into an existing home that wants cooling and they don't have forced air and it's just electric cove heating, typically we're going with ductless. If it's an existing home that does have ductwork, then we will opt for a ducted heat pump as well. And we're seeing the ducted heat pumps getting spec'd more and more on new construction jobs here in Jackson and Teton County as well. But you have both of those options. And then the other thing to consider is you can have a one-to-one mini split, which is kind of more of a traditional mini split like we have up here. And then you can also have what they call multi-splits, where you can have multiple indoor units for one outdoor unit, up to five. So you can have up to 5 zones for one outdoor unit, and makes it great for people that have different bedrooms. You got a living room and a kitchen. You want to put different unit in every zone, in every room of the house. Those are a great option. I think the only thing to consider about those is that they can't do heating and cooling simultaneously. So all the rooms got to be in heating, all the rooms got to be in cooling. But it does make it nice to be able to control the temperature in each one of those rooms. So just one thing to consider when you're looking into these systems. So what is So typically it's just one compressor. You just have different valves that open up to control the different circuits or the different zones. So you got one outdoor unit that has typically one compressor. Sometimes it'll have two compressors, and then this is just basically zone valves that controls the refrigerant going to and from each of the systems.
And then the valve is split in turn.
So typically, and this kind of varies from manufacturer to manufacturer, but typically the valves are in the outdoor unit. Yeah. So when it comes to installation, just wanted to review kind of how we go through, a typical project. One, we develop the scope, the pricing, the contract, make sure that you're one including what are the rooms that you want to be conditioned with the heat pump. Make sure obviously that you have the pricing lined up, the contract. When is this going to be installed in 2 weeks or is this going to be installed in 3 months? And then also for us specifically, we are just an HVAC contractor. We don't have our electrical license, so what we typically do is refer the customer to a licensed electrician that will then run the electrical from your panel to your outdoor unit. So making sure that there's no scope gaps, that the pricing meets the customer's expectation is really the first part of the project. Two is preparing for the project. obviously getting permitting, whether that's through Teton County or the town of Jackson, um, procuring the equipment and material. There are times where these systems get pushed out quite a bit, especially right in the middle of summer. It seems like inventory is usually pretty low, so oftentimes we have to get these shipped right from the factory, which can take 3 or 4 weeks instead of just having that Teton delivery, pick them up from Idaho Falls and bring them over here. And then developing that schedule and making sure that, hey, these are the days that the contractor is going to be in your home. Here's when we'll plan to be done, and here's when we'll plan to schedule the inspection and startup. And then performing the project. What that looks like is typically we're roughing in the indoor unit. We're if it's a high wall unit like we have here, we're hanging that unit on the wall. We're running our line set, our condensate drain, our communication wire from the indoor unit to the outdoor unit, and then installing the outdoor unit. Once that rough in and installation is complete, then we move on to making sure that all the electrical is wired correctly, that the electricians has come in, done their job, and then once that's complete, then we'll move on to the startup to make sure that we have the right amount of refrigerant in the unit, that the unit's producing ample cooling and heating, that it's right, and that it's running to specification as well. And I am glossing over a lot of fine details. We do make sure that we're pressure testing. We are brazing line set. We are evacuating it to make sure that there's no contaminants in the line set. So there is a lot of small details that go into the installation process to make sure that you are getting a quality system, because these systems are, although they are maintenance free when they're set up right, if there are any small inconsistencies with the installation, you'll have a lot of headaches, a lot of callbacks to your installation contractor. So it's really important to make sure that you're going with a contractor that knows these systems, that actually reads the installation manual, that goes through a startup checklist to make sure that every single detail between how tight you're torquing your flare nuts to making sure that you're going through the right evacuation process for the line set. All those details are really critical to make sure that you get a system that's installed right the first time, and then you don't have to worry about it. Typically, what we see if a system isn't installed correctly is compressors that get fried, which typically will fall under warranty, but it's still just an inconvenience to the customer to have to call the contractor out to fix that. Or you'll get refrigeration leaks, which takes a lot of time for somebody to come in and figure out where that leak's at. I'd say those are typically the biggest things. And then also just making sure that the filters are cleaned out, that the air can move through the indoor unit and then through the outdoor unit, especially this time of year, like with the cottonwood that typically will build up on the outdoor unit. A lot of times we'll see the coils getting frozen up because there's just a bunch of cottonwood that's just baked onto those outdoor units. But anyways, making sure that we're performing the install and the startup correctly. Then the last stage of the installation is the closeout, where we're getting the unit registered, make sure that you're getting the maximum amount of warranty for your system. Obviously, filing any rebate forms or help assisting with making sure that you have all the right information to submit to Lower Valley Energy to get the maximum amount of rebates, and then scheduling that inspection is kind of the last step in the whole process here. And then just a testimonial that we have from one of our customers. We've installed quite a few of these systems in Jackson, and just had tremendous success with these. And I really do see these systems as the future of our industry. The technology is only getting better, and I think especially here in Jackson, they're just a tremendous option. Again, with the ECW loan program, and then with the rebates. So I'll give you a couple seconds to read that testimonial from one of our customers here.
Mark, on the energy side, are you doing electricity and 208 or what they work at?
So you can get 120, but they 120 volts. So this unit actually, as you can see, is a 120 volt system, but I think you may only be able to get up to like a ton and a half. So you can't get really, big systems. You only get a certain amount of capacity. So you can do 120, but typically those units are going to be, 208 to 230. So as far as the circuit size, dependent on the size of the outdoor unit, I would say typically it's either a 30 or 40 amp circuit that you need. So, for smaller units like 2-ton units, that's typically like a 20 amp circuit. So so they don't come with a pigtail. So we basically set our unit, and an electrician runs a circuit from the main panel outside to the disconnect, which is required to be installed by the unit, and then from the disconnect they connect it to the unit. So
that's all. That's all common.
yep.
Outside.
Yes. Yep. So for the indoor units, going from the outdoor unit to the indoor unit, typically that's just like Plenum grade wiring, so we don't run that in any type of conduit. But yeah, outside.
Everything outside.
Yeah. Yeah. Correct. Yep. Right. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Megan here. Yep.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Mark. And now for the fun part, how you can save money and access tools to make heat pump upgrades a little bit more affordable. Now let's walk through real project costs for mini split projects, which Mark referenced a little bit earlier, make about 90% of what we see in terms of retrofits in Jackson. So here are 4 different example projects with different system layouts and number of mini split heads, and you'll see the total cost ranging from $8,000 to about $22,000 with that electrician also cost added in there as well. And for comparison, a new gas or boiler typically runs between $6,000 to $8,000, and if you're replacing both your furnace and adding central AC, you're looking at about $12,000 to $16,000. So right within those 3 and 2 indoor unit mini split heads. Here's Lower Valley Energy's fuel comparison chart, which shows air source heat pumps as the lowest cost way to heat your home. And as you saw on the previous slide, while the upfront cost of a heat pump is comparable to the traditional system replacement, the operational savings can be substantial. I think this is right here is operating that a heat pump is about 2.5 times more efficient than a traditional electric resistance, but as Mark was saying, they can get up to 3 or 4 times more efficient, but this is a little bit more on the conservative side. And the cost advantage is the real big reason people are exploring this switch. And now let's look at how to reduce upfront costs. So as Mark referenced, the Energy Conservation Works loan program, all Lower Valley Energy members are eligible. All you need is 12 months of on-time payments. With history with Lower Valley Energy, we don't do any credit checks, and you can borrow up to $40,000 at 1.5% interest over 5 years for heat pump projects and any of the other projects listed on the left-hand side. And with our sample projects, monthly payments range from $146 to $383, with total interest between $300 and $800 over the full loan term. And next we have Lower Valley Energy rebates. These rebates are available to electric customers only, since they are funded through the energy conservation dollars through the Bonneville Power Administration, Lower Valley's primary electric provider. And exciting news, Lower Valley is running a new promotion called the Summer of Savings. And for a limited time through September 15th, customers can receive an additional bonus depending on the project. So if you've been on the fence about making upgrades, now is a great time to act. And we also have Tony Allen here from Lower Valley Energy, who will take a moment to introduce themselves and say a couple words about opportunities.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tony from Lower Valley Energy. I run the conservation program. and because what they deliver in the front of the summer, and bonuses that are on top of our rate. She mentioned that the whole fact of primary, we still need to have that over so the but the primary is but yeah, we know where the things going on. The heat pumps are really popular and they'll offer incentives for the windows, people that are doors, heat pump water heaters, and something that they're looking up and these are only taking the home energy after the definitely contact. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. And seeing exactly what those summer saving bonuses are and what the specific rebates are broken out a little bit on this slide. So as we talked about, there's the two different systems. We have the ducted system, which is an additional $300 to $400, and then we also have the mini split, which again is what we've been primarily talking about today. And with the summer of savings, you can get $185 to $250, bringing it up to $835 and $900. So definitely be taking advantage of those before September 15th. And then next we have tax credits. With the tax credits, these cover up to 30% of project costs, capped at $2,000 per year for qualified heat pumps. And then there's an additional $1,200 annual cap for other upgrades like insulation or electrical panel upgrades. And so all of our example projects would qualify for the $2,000, and due to the passage of the recent federal budget bill, these tax credits will be eliminated after December 31st. So to ensure that you receive the full tax credit, we strongly recommend completing your project before the end of the year. And this is another one that is at risk, still pending in Wyoming, and may also be impacted by the federal budget process, but just having it up here, just so you're all aware. If anybody wants to do any advocacy work and reaching out to the Wyoming Energy Authority. But however, if implemented, these upgrades would offer $4,000 to $8,000 depending on where you fall in the area median income for heat pumps specifically. And now putting all the incentives together. I don't know if anybody's seen the Oprah episode when she gives everybody a car, but this is kind of how I feel a little bit whenever I get to show and put all the incentives together. So I hope you guys will laugh with me a little bit on this. Busy slide here, but the bottom line is that even without the Inflation Reduction Act rebates, if you completed a project before December 31st of this year, you could recoup 13 to 34% of these costs, finance your project over 5 years, and spend 2.5 times up to 4 times less on your electricity bill. And to wrap things up, here are your next steps if you're interested in moving forward in an energy efficiency project or just wanting to learn more. First one is setting up an energy audit. Starting with an energy audit is the best way to understand how your home is performing and where you can make the biggest impact. And you can email Tony or call him to set that up, or you can also reach out to me and I'll refer you to Tony to put you on the list. Second is, if you're not quite ready yet but want to stay in the loop, you can scan this QR code and that'll put you on our mailing list. And we'll send occasional updates on rebates, promotions like Summer of Savings and other local efficiency events. And the third is, if you have any questions, please reach out to us, whether it's regards to project eligibility, financing, or next steps. We're happy to help out wherever we can. Now is definitely a great time to take action with the extra incentives available, looking at that tax credit horizon set to expire at the end of the year, and we're here to support you in any way possible. And we hope this helped you better understand what heat pumps are, what they cost, and what support is available to help you make the switch. And with that, we'll open it up to questions.
You had a graph there with the cost of revenue gap.